And we want to welcome today our guest, Bishop Arthur Kennedy of Boston. Bishop, thank you for being here today.
Very glad to be here, John.
We're here to talk about the new evangelization, the year of faith. And I want to kind of frame the conversation in a nice quote I saw from Pope Benedict. So let me read this first. It says, "Being Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or a lofty idea, but the encounter with an event, a person, which gives life a new horizon and a decisive direction. Since God has first loved us, love is now no longer a mere command. It is the response to the gift of love with which God draws near to us."
That's it.
That's a wonderful quote.
It
and I
is.
think it kind of frames up the context of our conversation, which is to talk about the new evangelization. And this is the year of faith. So give us an idea of what the year of faith is in context of the new evangelization to start.
Okay, certainly. Well, the Year of Faith was announced by Pope Benedict, as you know, to begin last October and to go through until this coming November. And so we have a time in which he's calling us to refocus upon that dimension of our lives by which we are united with God, and particularly the way in which, through the mystery of Christ's revelation and his presence to us, which is the way we know about the mystery of God in Catholic faith and in Christian life, as a Trinitarian communion. And the Trinitarian communion is, as Pope Benedict frequently spoke about it, a communion of love. And it's out of that communion of love that Christ comes to us as the representative of the Father and then sends the Holy Spirit. But he reveals the mystery of the love through the mystery of the cross and the resurrection. So this becomes really the center of the way in which we come to know about the dynamism of our being created and the purpose of our being created, and also the goal of our being created. And it's the way in which we are drawn by our faith into the redemption, which brings us to have a participation in the life of God, ultimately as the fulfillment of who we are. So the whole understanding of the year of faith is to reawaken us to the sense of the mystery of the way in which the divine life presents to us a gift which draws us toward God. And this draws us, in a sense, out of ourselves. And by drawing us out of ourselves, it also brings us together with all others who are being drawn by God. And so the Church becomes then this very important communion in which the mystery of the love of God, realized through the act of faith, which is really a new awareness of this gift that we have received, and then the love becomes that response to it. So the year of faith really is a reawakening of our own attention to what has been given to us and what we are invited to be able to share in our daily life.
So you talk about a reawakening, and I guess in today's culture it's very secular. That idea goes back, though, we were discussing before we sat down about where this all stems from. Give us an idea before we delve into the new evangelization of why it's needed, and this actually stems back to the French Revolution. Why is that?
Well, because this is the Church has always lived within a culture. It's the culture, in a sense, is the world in the way in which the gospel would talk about world. It's a culture in which there are competing sets of meanings and competing sets of claims about what it means to be human. And this has been true. I mean, you find it right away in the Old Testament. The mystery of the faith of Abraham, who we still call the father of faith, which is this awakening to the fact that the culture in which he lives, which also has a religious definition to it, is one which has imprisoned him, and he has no sense. There's no ability to understand any real purpose in life, because everything is dominated by this. Whatever the cycles of the cosmos were, that's the way humans had to live. So the issue of the culture is something which is more and more, we're more and more aware of it. I mean, because while the Church was always dealing with it, it had to deal with the Roman Empire, it had to deal with the transformation from being a Palestinian religion to becoming a religion of an empire. It had to deal with the transposition from when the empire itself collapsed. It had to deal with the issue of the way in which the church became the source of education and the rebuilding of civilization. But by the time you get to the 1700s in the West, there is this great diffusion that's beginning to emerge, partially because there are new awarenesses that are available in the culture that hadn't been there before, such as the importance of understanding history and how things developed over time. And so while the church always had its sense of the history, the secular world took up this matter of understanding history and then began to try to find ways to control it. Where is it going to go? And this leads us then to the revolutions of the 18th century. And the French Revolution in particular intended deliberately to eliminate Catholicism as having any influence not only on France but of the whole of Europe. And this began what the Napoleonic Empire called the Secularization, which was the secularization of all of Europe. And this began to be a deliberate attack upon faith, which the Church really had not experienced in such an intense way before.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that brings us to our point. I wanted to get some historical background, but we're going to continue this conversation next week and get some more insight into what the new evangelization is and exactly how it's being implemented here in Boston and around the world.
Exactly.
So Bishop Kennedy, we'll stay tuned for that, and we'll be back shortly.